imagination and fantasy.
Yeah.
There's so much imagination, there's so much fantasy and flair. Imagination and flair. Lack a bit of imagination and fantasy. Imagination and fantasy. There's so much imagination, there's so much fantasy and flair. Imagination and flair. Lack a bit of imagination and fantasy.
Yeah.
Good evening and welcome to, I think, the specialist edition of the Soccer Podcast.
This is the biggest guest that we have had by far, Trent.
I think, because we said we were going to stop when we got Kenny Lowe on the podcast.
Yep.
We haven't got him yet.
Yeah.
We said we were going to stop when we got David Vianic on.
That was another big get.
It was another big get. But Tony Sage, the owner of the Perth Glory, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and welcome.
No worries, guys. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Now, Tony, how's the day been so far?
I had a good day. Yeah, look, I have a day job. I run several mining companies, so despite COVID, we're doing quite well.
That's really good. And how do you balance all your jobs and managing the club as well? Is it the club comes after work, or is it?
Yeah, look, it's constant because anything can happen at any time. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago when Andy Keogh was in Adelaide, and all of a sudden I get a phone call in the middle of the night. He was found urinating in the back alleyway of a, so funny things like that do happen, and you do get a call. It was on the front page of the paper the next day, actually. But so yeah, it's a 24-hour job. Anything can happen with injuries as well during training. So it's not a free day from Glory. But look, in the end, I hire professionals to run the club. Papa on the side of the football, Jacob Burns. And for the admin and marketing and et cetera, is Tony Pinata. So really I rely on those guys to keep the things ticking along day to day.
It's the holy trinity of Tony's.
Correct, yeah. And a very successful one at that, bringing home the Premier's Plate last year.
For sure. Now, I was expecting you to wear a suit, Tony, and I was going to ask you, we've got the Premier's Plate in the background now, I was going to ask you if you're wearing a Tony Barlow suit, but there's no suit today.
Always wear Tony Barlow, except when I do podcasts at 5:30.
Fair enough.
So, Tony, how does a normal day start off to you? What time do you wake up? What do you have for breakfast? Do you snooze your alarm? Stuff like that.
No, look,
what's a day in the life?
My family will tell you this. I wake them up every morning. I'm up at 4 every morning. I have done for 30 or 40 years. I can't... I'm a classic insomniac. But, yeah, I go to the gym, go for a long run, and I'm in the office by 7 and usually get home between 6 and 7 in the evening and... take calls. Most of my investors are from London or New York, so I'm on the phone to them till about 10, 11 o'clock at night, and then I finally get a few hours sleep. Yeah,
because you were saying you do have a 9 to 5 as well. Just out of curiosity, what's your hourly chargeable rate? Because I'm just a little bit interested in that.
Well, look, it just varies on the type of client that I do have, but anywhere from $500 to $1,500 an hour, I would usually charge out my time.
That's not too bad.
There you go. Now, Tony, I've been at a few of the chairman's lounge functions, and you always seem to be flying in from overseas to reach the game.
Yeah. Yeah, look, the one thing I'm proud of, I mean, a lot of the other owners don't or can't.
Yeah.
So I've missed one home game in 14 years, I think, as owner. So that's been great. And look, I do tend to go to most of the Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane games. I've got friends in Brisbane and family. So I always tend to go up there. But a lot of business I do in Melbourne and Sydney. So I've very rarely missed those sort of games as well. So really what I do miss is Wellington. I've only been twice. Adelaide maybe 3 times. Newcastle, I think only twice. Central Coast about 4 times. So, but I do, in the end, if you're the owner of the club and it's a passion, you should go.
100%. Now, I'm really interested, how did getting to own the club start? So how did you sort of get into buying it? Because I don't think...
Ooh, geez, a long, long time ago, in 1996-7, I did a deal with Frank Lowy, a property deal. He wanted a shopping centre that the company I was working for owned. And we were in negotiations. We talked football, and to my surprise, in 2007, almost 10 years later, he rang me out of the blue. He said, "Look, I'm sending my CEO. I remember having a conversation with you. You said you love football. Perth Glory's up for sale. If you don't buy it, we're going to take the licence away from Perth." So that's how it started, and we did our due diligence, and I managed to co-op two friends who left me very quickly because they saw they was never going to make a profit. So that was bittersweet in the end. I mean, it was fantastic owning the club, sharing the costs, and within 2 years they had both gone, and I've stuck around.
Yeah, so yeah, for the last 10 years or so, yeah, you haven't been really sharing the cost. It's just been purely you. It's like widely known that you are looking for another investor. Is that still the case for Perth Glory?
Yeah, look, one thing I'm disappointed at in media, etc., is they slam you for trying. But I've been transparent for close to 2 years now that, you know, a lot of the other owners have wealthy backers. For example, Melbourne City's the Manchester City Group, which is owned by the top sheikh in Abu Dhabi. He's worth a couple of $100 billion US dollars. And you've got the Russian oligarch that owns Sydney FC, and I can just go on. There's 3 clubs that are owned by Chinese businessmen. So it's very, very difficult to compete, not only with players but getting good coaches. And Tony Popovich didn't come cheap. So you really got to dig deep. So I do need someone to share the load.
100%. Do you feel like it once or one day will ever be profitable? Because I know, like a lot of the comment is that you lose a lot of money in the job, and I feel like not many other people would do it. Do you see it owning an A club one day being like you would make money, or?
Look, Melbourne Victory made a profit for a few years. It's a double-edged sword. If we had 15,000 fully rusted on, paid up members, it would break even. Yeah. Okay. We've only ever got to 12, and they weren't really. A lot of those are part-time fans. As they buy 5 game memberships. They're still a member, but only buy 5 game. So that is the key. We've got to get Perth football fans really behind the club, paying for their full membership, and then we will see the club breaking even. On all the other metrics, it's very, very difficult unless you've got the fans there. Yeah. It's the TV money isn't as good as AFL, cricket, NRL. So that's one side that's low compared to the other sports. So really, it is the fans, and that's what I always try and say. It's the fans are the most important.
Because also a few years ago, you did mention that you were looking for like expansion into like Southeast Asia or Glory hosting games in Southeast Asia. Is that still an option that you're looking at the moment? Yeah,
look, there's a brand new CEO of the FFA, and he shares the same vision as I do. He worked at FIFA. He knows how big the game is in Asia. Singapore's 4.5 million people in the city, but just to the north, Malaysia, 60-odd million people. They're mad football. So I'd like to take a couple of home games there, but what I'd like to see is a Singapore team in the A-League and a Malaysian team in the A-League and a Manila team in the A-League and probably a Jakarta team. So you've got 4 massive, massive countries that follow football, and that's 300 million people will be watching the A-League. It'll be fantastic, but that's a vision probably for 5 or 10 years away.
Yeah, okay. So I like that idea. What are your thoughts on bringing in a second division in terms of like Glory essentially could get relegated, and how do owners sort of are viewing that sort of second division?
It's a difficult one because we all see what happens in all the other countries and how exciting it is at the end of the season having these bottom teams playing, and there's sometimes more interest in who's being relegated. So there's so much fan excitement and interest, and then you've got the other division having their playoffs. I mean, it is the biggest, the EPL playoff from Championship to EPL is the biggest money-earning game in the world because they go from earning 30 or 40 million pounds to a minimum payday of 260 million pounds. So it's a big game. So promotion relegation is, I think, everyone's aim. In Australia, it's so difficult with our geography. And that's the biggest thing, the cost of getting these teams up. If you look at an NPL team in Perth, I mean, I've got one as well, its budget is around 150,000. Yeah. A-League budget minimum is around 10 million. Now, how can it work when you transition from 150,000 budget to a $10 million budget? And that is the biggest difficulty. And the cost obviously is prohibitive to some of those clubs having to fly to Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane,
Yeah.
etc., etc. So one thing that we have got to overcome is that discrepancy in that. But I think eventually it will happen, but I can't see it happening for 10 years. None of the A-League clubs at the moment are profitable.
Yeah.
So how can a second tier be profitable at the same time? And will there be enough money in the TV coverage of a second division?
Yeah, because Fox Sports, I think next season is their last season as the TV rights dealer.
Correct.
Like, as an owner, how important are the TV rights?
Oh, it's the lifeblood of all sport. I mean, whether you go NFL, whether you go NBA, whether you go EPL, Bundesliga, everything is dependent on your TV rights. And if they're non-existent, you haven't got a league. I mean, just look at the NBL for the last 3 seasons before. Did anyone watch the basketball? It had big resurgence when it got back on, when they did have a TV deal, but there was 2 or 3 years in the wilderness.
ABC or something.
Yeah.
It wasn't on Fox or yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And one of my friends owns the Perth Heat, but it's got no TV rights deal. So I don't know, how many games of baseball have you seen Perth Heat play?
Yeah, none. Yeah, you
Right.
barely even see it in the paper as well. So
Correct. So that's because it had no TV coverage. So TV coverage is number one. Fox are leaving us, but I've always said, and I've been one of the outspoken owners on this, it should be on free-to-air. When the Big Bash was on Fox exclusively, it didn't do well. It changed to Channel 10, the ratings went through the roof, and then Fox brought it back after that. But it just goes to show you, when you have free-to-air, I mean, in WA alone, only 28% of the people had Fox. Yeah. So really only 28% of our fan base, on average, would have Fox in their home. So the only place that they can go find out about it, it's not on free-to-air, is either go to the game, and a lot of people can't. They live in the Pilbara or they live in Bunbury. We've got a lot of our support down there. So you really need it on a free-to-air channel to really showcase its best qualities and to get a wider audience. We had a game, I think a Saturday game on ABC. We had 250,000 people watch us. But our average game at Fox is about 60. So it's a big difference. So it's all about eyeballs, and free-to-air gets a lot more eyeballs than pay TV.
yeah, that being said as well, Perth Glory's exposure, especially in like the newspapers in Perth, they barely get a mention compared to like your AFL, your cricket, your rugby. How do you think Glory can, say, improve that exposure, or maybe we don't even think about going into the newspapers, but maybe another alternate route?
Yeah, well, that's a very simple answer to that. I just ring Kerry Stokes and say, buy the A-League rights, and it'll be all over the paper. And on Channel 7. So it's as simple as that. If one of the commercial channels here end up with the rights for the season after Fox finishes, you'll see a lot more exposure. So once you get that level of exposure on free-to-air, they have to cover it. And if it's Channel 7, fantastic, because they own basically Perth.
Is there any way you can influence them to, or as an owner, is it frustrating that no one is really taking that opportunity? And
Look, it is frustrating, especially we've had a good season and a half, right? We won the Premier's Plate. I thought actually that week of the grand final, the Seven West Media did a fantastic job. We were in the paper, I think, every day, front or back, and that was good. So really, it's up to the FFA until the owners own the league to really promote the game and get these sort of media organisations excited. Us as owners can do our bit. We did advertise in the West, and when you do advertise, they give you a bit of copy. So we have done that in the past. You would have seen banner ads. So that does help. But in the end, it's really about the major television rights owner. If it's a commercial TV station, we'll be a lot better off and we'll get a lot more publicity.
for sure.
Like, what would your opinion be on, say, Optus Sports, or like a live streaming service, like similar to Kayo? Because there's been a lot of push on social media in regards to Optus. What would your opinions be in regards to that?
I was terribly disappointed when Optus took over the EPL, to tell you the truth, because I had my Fox, and it was fantastic. We could just transition from, especially here in Perth, watch a game come home and watch an EPL game on Fox. So, and I'm not an Optus customer. So for me, putting it on a streaming platform like that was a disappointment. However, I've changed my mind since. I've since, on my Telstra phone, got an Optus app and stream it onto whatever device I have at the time. So it is a good platform. The only difficulty is, again, it's a subscription service, and there's probably 60, maybe 70% of the Australian people that won't watch it that way. But if they pay the dollars and we're able to get some good quality players because they put a lot of money into the sport, so be it, it has to be done that way. But my preference, obviously, always has been commercial television.
Yeah, like the one benefit I do see from Optus, because like recently they just acquired the rights for the Korean League and the Japanese League, and you'll see like all throughout their social media they're always posting clips about this, that, or the other about the Korean League, and they seem to be getting like a little bit of traction. Like there's a little part of me that says if they did acquire the A-League, that you would see, especially on social media, a lot more exposure.
Yeah, but then again, it's if you're looking for it. My point is, if you're watching Channel 7, say, and on the news, and because they've got Glory, the rights, they're showing it. So 500,000 people who watch the news, everyone will see Glory. But unless you're specifically looking for football content, you won't find it, right, on Optus. You won't. But again, it's a decision that the FFA will have to make after Fox finish. But I think there'll be... it depends on the dollar of the cheque that they bring, whoever brings.
Yeah, for sure. We'll just jump ship a little bit. You touched on the academy a little bit and your NPL team. So you've obviously invested quite a bit in the academy. Have you been happy with it so far? And like, do you want to see like more young players bring to the first team, or have you been quite happy with it so far?
It's a difficult one. We under Kenny Lowe, we had 14 West Australians out of 23, and most of them have come through the academies before we set up our academy. A lot of the fan base thought that was a great idea, but we weren't winning.
Yeah.
So if you look at the last 4 Premiers plate holders, it's basically been the oldest team in the competition. Under Popovich at Western Sydney, under Graham Arnold, and now Corica at Sydney, and us last year. So experience does count. So the fans want to win. I think you would have been around in the crowd when they were booing Kenny, etc., etc. And he had kids on the park.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a balance. What we want the academy for, though, is very, very important. It's for development and revenue. Right? We sold Danny De Silva, we sold Jacob Italiano, only 2. Whereas the academy over at Central Coast, because Graham Arnold had set that up 12 years ago, they've got a lot of people through. So Jacob Burns has done a great job. I think in the NPL last year I went to the grand final. We were there against Perth.
Yep.
So, you know, we got to the grand final. We've got to remember, we got a bunch of kids. Our average age out there is 17, 18, whereas we're playing men.
Yeah.
Right? So it is difficult, but they did very, very well. I think we're 4th or 5th at the moment this year. So, you know, Richie Garcia has done a fantastic job coaching them this year. And it's a very, very important part of the whole Perth Glory to have your academy and bringing kids along. I think we got 220 from the age group right up to the first team in the NPL. So, look, very, very important. I hope that we will unearth a couple of other stars over the next few years. There's a couple in our ranks that are very, very good. Richie's been telling me about. So, yeah, watch out.
Now, it was also announced today that Glory have signed Andrew Naboot and Nathaniel Atkinson. Yeah, Nathaniel Atkinson. What do you have to say about those 2 signings? And it does show that we are committed to playing out the ACL with especially 2 decent quality players.
Yeah, look, it is important to refresh your squad. As you know, we let 5 players go. A couple have already gone with Rich and Kim. So we are looking for 7 players. We need them. We need them quickly if the ACL starts again. We'll talk about that later, I presume. So yeah, very, very good. When you see players play against you, you hate them. So, there's a lot of players that have come to the club that I didn't like. I mean,
Neil Kilkenny was one of them.
yeah, Kilkenny, Fornaroli. But as soon as they put your colours on, you change your mind. But Nabut's a great player. Both of them are. Both of them bring a lot of aggression, if you like, and that's what Popovic likes, when the players are really fired up and aggressive, and both of those players are that. And they've got a lot of skill, so hopefully they're over here as quickly as possible, because, as I said, we don't know when we are going to be playing again. It might be in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, in a hub somewhere around the world playing ACL.
So how do you deal with that uncertainty at the moment?
It's very difficult. It's a money issue as well.
Yeah.
So we're waiting to find out. Our sponsor is the state government on our ACL team. Okay. And as soon as we find out where and when, we'll be able to receive our funds. And basically all those funds will be going, because in this situation, the team that's travelling pays. So it's going to be a very costly exercise. So I hope it's one trip for 3 or 4 games.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, how many games have we got? 4, 5, 6 games left.
5 to go. Yeah, I think so.
5 to go, yeah. And we'll see how far we go.
For sure. So how have you handled, obviously, like, there's been a lot of talk on the struggles this season with regards to playing players and stuff like that. I know, like, an article came out today saying, it was like a 30% of 30 players getting 30% of what their contract was saying, like on average. And like, I know you got a lot of slack, or got a hit on the media for essentially doing what a lot of other people were doing. Yeah. Like, how do you navigate that landscape when, like, nothing like this happened before, and had this situation unfold, and had you sort of think it was covered?
It's very difficult. And look, we had a lot harder time than the AFL and the NRL. The AFL and the NRL had their coffers full. They were beginning their season, so, for example, the Eagles had done their membership drive. They'd got $30 or $40 million in the bank, and then it hit. So they had money in the bank.
Yeah.
We were 90% or 85% through our season. We'd spent all our money. So we had no money left. Okay, so that's one big difference between the 2-3 codes. And also we're lucky because the AFL very quickly said, right, it's a 50% pay cut, and so did the NRL. Our players ended up having a 30% pay cut. So in the end, I think they all have jobs. There's 2.2 million people that don't out there. They've been fortunate. They might not think that themselves, but they're still working, and a lot of Australians aren't working. We're in the entertainment business, and you go to Melbourne at the moment, if you're a hospitality worker, you just can't work.
Yeah, that's right.
So look, it was very difficult. They are in a different category. Obviously, they're sports people, and they have to train and keep their bodies fit, etc., etc. So that's the arguments we're getting back from the players. But in the end, every sport in the world has had to take pay cuts, and I don't think it's stopped. I think the salary cap will change for this mini season that's coming up, and the players will have to make a decision whether they take that cut or not.
I'd like to know your thoughts on the salary cap as well. Like, are you of the opinion that, like, it stifles competition? And
look, no, I'm of the opinion that in Australia, with our vast distances, we have difficulties, and we have difficulties in cost structures. Like in England, for example, everyone takes the bus or a train. Here we have to get on a plane, and you have to stay 2 nights accommodation. All that has got to be paid for by something, right? By somebody. So the salary cap there was created as a leveller. A lot of other countries in the world now are adopting a salary cap system. They do now in the MLS. So, yes, it's not as free as in the EPL or the Bundesliga or La Liga. But how many teams outside of 4 or 5 clubs have ever won? I mean, EPL's been a bit unusual with Leicester, but Barcelona or Real, you've got Bayern in Germany just about wins it every year, and Juventus or Napoli, I suppose, have been up there. But not many clubs can win it in a competition where there's no cap.
Could you say like a similar thing to the A-League?
Just in Australia, Newcastle were in the grand final 2 years ago, and we were in the grand final. So it has not been always Sydney FC I think it was Melbourne Victory in Newcastle 2 years ago.
Yeah, because Sydney have won 5 championships now. I think Victory have 3 or 4. Brisbane have 3.
We have 3.
Yeah.
Well,
in the A-League era,
you try telling Liverpool that they have only won one championship.
That's a very fair point.
We've won 3. And I hate the fact that people just discount that. I always say it, we've won 3, so we're up there. It might not have been in the A-League, but like I said, every league carries forward. And you tell in the AFL, you tell Carlton they haven't won a championship.
Yeah, I support them, so yeah.
Right? So we've won 3, so we're up there, and we want to win more. I think that's my ambition. My ambition's always been into the ACL, and we're there. It's just been the worst year to get there.
Yeah, pretty much. Are you happy with like the format of the A-League as well, say with the finals, or would you rather like a home and away season and leave it at that?
No, I think the finals is a necessary evil. I think the champions should be the premiers, but it's a money-making exercise for all sports in Australia, and it is very, very lucrative, so it has to happen. But the way it happens, I don't like. I think at the grand final, and I said it last year, even though we hosted it, it should have been 2 legs. The grand final should always be 2 legs. So Sydney should have had a chance in front of their 50,000. Number one, it generates more revenue.
Yeah. And that's the only way you'll get 60,000 people at Optus Stadium to watch Glory play.
Correct. So if they had 2 legs, it would have been a lot fairer on Sydney. So first, second, I just think it should be 2 legs, the grand final. And it's more exciting. I mean, I've seen a lot of the Champions League semis. They don't do it for the final because it's a neutral venue. But some of the semis were fantastic, having the 2 legs. And I hope to have an owners meeting when we own the league to say that this is, number one, it's more revenue, but number 2 will be more exciting. And both sets of fans can see.
That being said as well, with expansion, are you happy with the current goals the A-League has set of trying to get 14 teams in and the new team MacArthur next season?
Yeah, look, I think 16 is the optimal. 12 next year. Let's cross fingers. We don't know what's happening with a couple of clubs. 14 I think within 2 years, and then 16 within 3-4 years. And like I said, I like it to go up north. I mean, there's not many cities left in Australia. I mean, you've got 5 in New South Wales already, and you'll have 3 in Victoria. Can we do one here? I don't know. Can we do another one in Adelaide? I don't know. I like local derbies. I'd love to have a Fremantle team in the competition.
They did put in a bid last time, I remember.
They did, but they had no money. That was it was quickly dismissed. I don't even think they got to the second round. But I'd love to see a Fremantle team in there playing probably out of the old Fremantle Oval. It would be great.
Yeah, there is a big Italian community there, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Just on that, we do have a few sponsors we do need to shout out.
We do. I'm wearing, you can't see, but because we aren't filming, but I'm wearing my vintage soccer kit. So Vintage Soccer Shirts Australia, you can use a discount code SOKKAH at the checkout for 10% off. And if we need to stream an event, Streamgate Live Streaming Australia, Dennis sent us a message. He said, how did we get Tony on the podcast? Streamgate Live Stream, if you need a live streaming event, check them out for sure. And on that, I want to ask, what do you find, Tony, in terms of a little bit the distant future in terms of expansion of the club, and is it the academy, or where do you see the Glory going in a few years?
Look, I think that the academy is, as I said, integral part of the club. Yeah. We want to see a lot of the juniors coming through. Once they come through, play into the first team, then we can sell them off into wherever they want to go, into any of the European leagues or into Asia. So on that side, I think we're doing very, very well. Again, we were in the grand final last year. The W League, very, very important. We got the World Cup coming up in 2023, so we really want to strengthen our W League team. I think we're in 3 grand finals in 5 years, so it just goes to show my commitment to women's football. But really, in the end, it's all about silverware. We want to win titles, we want to win Premier's plates, and we want to win, get into Asia, and hopefully one day win Asia.
For sure.
One thing that can decide if a team does win silverware is the VAR. Are you for or against it? As an owner, do you have a different opinion as a fan of the game as well?
No, I hate it. It's I think it destroys the flow of the game. I mean, Melbourne City were robbed the other night. I mean, I thought the goalkeeper had moved. He knew which way the ball was going, and to say that, to take, and that's so important in the grand final. Not many goals are scored in the grand final because people just shut up shop. So I mean that 2 years ago, Melbourne Victory won a title off a mistake from the VAR.
Yeah, and you can even say even in last year's one against Sydney.
Sydney should have had a goal. Yeah.
Like, who knows if Sydney scored, Glory could have put them into gear. Like, who knows?
Yeah, so look, I'm not a fan of it, but I do understand why it's there because money, it's so important to get the result right. But some of the decisions over the last couple of years, I remember one decision against us, I forgot who it was now, I think it was Risdon, had his hands behind his back, and he was in the penalty box and then the ball hit his hands, but his hands were behind his back. He had no idea that the ball was going to be kicked there, and penalty. I mean, geez, it just, look, it's a lottery, and I don't like it, but I understand why it's there, and I just think it needs to be some very, very good professional referee needs to be in the box viewing it.
Yeah, because you find at the moment the decisions coming out of the VAR, they're not consistent one week to the next, which is such a big issue. Because if you do have the VAR, it has to be 100% right all the time.
Well, in
and
the
we're
grand
just not
final,
seeing that.
yeah, in the grand final again, I mean, Le Fondre got pushed. I thought that was a penalty.
Yeah.
And you had three of the commentators definite penalty, then Bozza down on the thing saying it wasn't a penalty. But to me, it was a penalty, right? And so the VAR, I don't even know if they looked at it. But, again, another mistake. So 2 mistakes, but it made a big difference to the game.
Yeah.
City would have been 1-0 up and they could have just defensive form and maybe won the title.
Yeah, for sure. Now, Joe, should we move on to a few of our Twitter questions?
We should.
Okay. This is a good one from Lee Broxham Facts. He asks, your earliest football memory and if Tony ever played football as a young kid?
Yeah, I played football. I grew up in England and Italy. My mother was Italian, my father English. So I remember going to games. Man City is my team. Dad was Leeds. And, I went to a few games with grandfather and my father. So that's my earliest football memory. And, yes, I did play. Then we moved to Australia. My father said we better play the local game and fit in. So I gave up.
Cool. We now have a question from Alex, and he says, do you keep your sauce in the fridge or in the cupboard?
In the cupboard. I don't like it cold.
Ooh, I like it cold.
I think I'm in the fridge as well.
Got one from Chicken Treat Fan Club. He's one of our biggest fans, and he says, what's your go-to chicken treat order?
I just quarter chicken and chips for me.
Smart. Also have another food-related one, KFC or Nando's from Charles Reed's Hairline.
Definitely Nando's.
William Dodd asked a good one. He says, is the club still pursuing a marquee player like they did last year with Ibrahimovic, or is that not possible within the current economy?
It's not possible in the current economy, but, we've got Fornaroli, and he's pretty much our marquee.
Yeah, for sure. This is from John the Democrat, John. We'll call him John the Democrat. How is the A-League demerger from the FFA going?
Slowly, too slow for our liking. We had an agreement last October, and we thought we'd have it wrapped up by June 30 this year. We're putting another deadline on the FFA. We want to really accelerate that because they've got a lot on their plate with the World Cup. They've got the Socceroos, the Olyroos, the Joeys, and the Matildas. So they've got a big job, and they can't run the A-League and do those other 4 teams. So we want to split as quickly as possible. We're hoping it'll be before the 31st of December this year.
Awesome. Can you bring back the Kappa kits?
Well, we're talking to Kappa at the moment.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we are. I love Kappa. My friend owns the franchise here in Australia, so he's trying to get us back. But I leave that up to the CEO and the merchandise manager. But yeah, we are looking at different options.
Awesome. I think we've covered all the Twitter questions. So if you enjoyed the podcast today, we are supported by, I think, is there 21? 19 patron backers. I might read them out this time, Joe.
So whilst I'll get our patrons up, what's your tip for the Eagles game tonight?
30 points to the Eagles.
Who are they versing?
Essendon. We hate Essendon.
The guy I sit next to at work just blabs on about Essendon
Yeah, the Bombers,
all
yeah.
day, of every minute. So
Yeah. So I love all other sports. I'm a Western Force fan as well, a Wildcats fan. Anything to do with Western Australia and the Eagles, obviously.
I love it. Okay. We got 20. We've got a new one today. 20 patrons. Shout out to Dusty, Ryan Robertson, Milan Kasari, Oscar Brotherson, Joe Kay, Andy Tin, John Morris, Harry Russell, Harry, Dennis Fernandez, Ben Robson, Taylor Morris, Ben Krizik, Natasha Williams, Andrea, Jacob Colangelo, Jordan Waters, David Clark, Fraser Marnham, Glenn Oliviero. Thank you for supporting us. And Tony, thank you for...
now, have one more question.
Oh,
Will you be voting for Basil Zemplis to be Lord Mayor of Perth?
Baz. Look, I don't think live in the city of Perth, so I can actually get away with not answering that question because I don't live in the city of Perth.
Very diplomatic.
Yeah, I live in the city of Cambridge, so I don't even know who my mayor is.
Yeah. And on that note, thanks, Tony, so much for coming on. All the best watching the Eagles game next.
No worries.
Thanks so much. Cheers.
See you guys.
Cheers.